Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, back with my LPL Week 4 weekly review and analysis for all of the games. I am back. If you guys do not watch my other videos, most notably my LEC one, then I'll just say it here. I have been a little bit sick this week, so if you do hear my voice sound a little bit different, it's because of that. I do feel quite a bit better today, being Sunday the 31st of January, so I do feel quite a bit better today, so hopefully this, it sounds a little bit better than the LEC video, but just keep in mind that my voice may sound quite a bit different. We have some very, very interesting results, and actually some very hype games to get into this week, so if you guys are excited, please go ahead and leave a like down there. It really, really does tell me that you guys are enjoying this content, and it, it helps to get out there to a few more people, which is always a good thing. So go ahead and leave a like if you do really enjoy what I do here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our day one games. Our first game of day one, our first set of day one is going to be EDG Edward Gaming taking on ThunderTalk Gaming in a 2-0. Pretty decently convincing win here for EDG. This is, potentially the best team in the league taking on one of the worst teams in the league here. So not really too surprising of an outlook. I have talked on length about how good EDG has looked so far in 2021. That has definitely continued this week and in this series. EDG just looks like one of, if not the best team in the world right now, which is not something I would have expected to say before the season started. Viper is going to be my player of the series here. He is very, very likely the LPL MVP so far. He has been incredible. He has been arguably the world MVP, if you just want to take the player that's been performing the best globally. I think Viper has made probably the strongest case to be that, just across every region. He has been fantastic for this EDG team. You really couldn't have expected anything more from him. But the rest of the team has not been slouches either. I think, obviously, I've talked at length about how good Gigi has been. But, that's just personally what I see out of him. Clear Love, obviously, not getting a chance to play here. You have Flandre as well, who has been really, really good. Scout has been solid, and Mako's been really good in that bot lane with Viper. This team is just firing on all cylinders. They look like they are the complete package. This draft, even for them, I like to call this a skill draft. This is what we like to call a skill draft. It's a skill check, rather, which is essentially we're going to pick a comp that's not very good, and we're going to see if we can win on it just because we're better. And that's kind of what happened in Game 2 here. You had the Gangplank in the top lane, you had the Lilia in the jungle, you had the Azir in the mid lane, and the Aphelios in the bot lane. You have very, very little pressure, if any pressure, on this map, and they just outskilled TT so much here to the point where they could walk away with the victory even on a comp that was so slow. As for TT, just not a terrible loss. Obviously, one of the best teams in the world here. I like to see the improvements, the adaptations and draft coming out here. You bring out the Aurelia for Chalizi, that's new. You bring out the Rek'Sai for Xiaopeng, that's new. Xiaopeng is going to be my dud of the series, mostly because he just straight up got out jungled. He was basically a non-factor, getting caught out pretty much everywhere. Obviously, on the Hecarim and the Rek'Sai, you're going to be the engage tool here, but just not necessarily the series you wanted to see out of him. He is coming in here. I believe this is his first series of the year coming in here for Bless. I didn't think Bless looked too terrible, so to see Xiaopeng come in here and really, really struggle, you got to consider which one is going to be better here. It's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that moving forward. Obviously, we'll get to TT's other series later in the week. A pretty big upset, no spoilers, but we'll get to that later in the week. But as for this one, EDG looks dominant. TT just looks outclassed, which is fine. They're going up against one of the best teams in the world, but this is kind of the result that we all expected here. Moving on to our second series of day one, and that's going to be JD Gaming taking on Rare Atom in a pretty easily dominant 2-0 win here for JDG. They just looked good throughout. They've looked a little bit questionable at the start of this year. Mostly that top side has looked questionable, but they looked very, very good in this series here. My player of the series is going to be Lumao there in the support position. I thought he was incredible on that Gragas and on that Galio. Both picks were very, very solid for him. That Galio especially was really, really good in Game 2. This team just looked more complete than I think they have had all year. I know Rare Atom obviously isn't the level of competition that they've been playing. JDG has had what is pretty much undoubtedly the hardest schedule to start the year here in the LPL, and that's definitely reflected in their record, but I think this team definitely still has a lot of talent. I think you're definitely concerned with whether or not they are an actual contender, considering, they were a finalist last year. They went to LPL finals, and I think you're definitely concerned with what they can do with that this year, but this is a good step in the right direction. As for Rare Adam, Leon obviously in here in the jungle instead of Ikes. I like Leon a little bit more, but he just did not work in this series. He is going to be my dud of the series here. Again, kind of similar to what we were talking about last series with Xiao Peng. You're going to be engaging a lot on the Pantheon and on the Olaf, so you're going to be dying a lot, but 13 deaths is quite extravagant. Honestly, Rare Adam just never really had control of any of these games, so it's really hard to say. It's hard to point the finger at one player, but Leon just didn't really play up to expectations here. The entire team actually kind of fell apart, if we're being honest. Fofo was taken off of some of his more comfortable picks. The Zoe comes to mind. The Yone is another one that I think he's very comfortable on. Put him on this more control mage Syndra style. He didn't look nearly as good. Obviously, he's going up against Yao, who's a very, very good mid laner, but Fofo I would consider a pretty decent mid laner and kind of the driving force of this team so far this year, and he did not perform well here. iBoy, again, it's hard to do stuff on the Aphelios and the Kai'Sa when your team is behind, but, it's not an excuse. I think this entire team just needs to move forward. JD Gaming, they looked good here. They have another really, really tough test later in the week. We're going to get checked out how they do there, but as for them, they're surviving the early storm. Everything's just going to get easier from them from here on out. And then as for Rare Adam, decent showing here. They looked pretty okay in Game 1. Didn't look like completely outclassed. Game 2 was kind of a stomp, but, they're going up against what we assumed would be one of the best teams in the league, so you can't hold that loss to them too much. That's going to bring us into Day 2 of Week 4 of our LPL action, and to kick that off, it's going to be Royal Never Give Up, RNG, taking on Victory 5 here in one of the few best of threes, the actual 3-game sets that we got this week. A 2-1 win for RNG here, taking on Victory 5. RNG has been another very pleasant surprise to start the year here. They look very, very good. We were wondering how this team would look considering they're arguably their best player, Zhao, who's role swapping to the top lane. You're bringing in a very highly touted prospect in Cryan in the mid lane. This team has come together really well. You bring in Wei from eStar, didn't necessarily look the best on that team at all points in time, but he has looked fantastic. He is going to be my player of the series here against Victory 5. He has looked unbelievably good for this RNG team to kick off 2021. He looks like an absolute steal pickup for this team. I do love this matchup because obviously it's Wei versus Wei, which is, the funniest matchup that there is. But Wei coming out, the single Wei coming out on top here, looking very, very solid. RNG just looks good all around. The series was relatively close. V5 actually probably had the most dominant game in Game 2. That was probably the least competitive one out of all of them. Audi, I thought, played really, really well in that game. Just kind of a shout out. Audi obviously coming in here for Longxing. I have no idea where Longxing is. If someone knows what's going on with Longxing and why he's not in this Victory 5 lineup, please let me know down in the comment section below. But I can't seem to find anything on where he is. But they are playing Audi and later in the week Invincible over him, which is not, I don't think that's the right decision, especially if you're trying to win. So, as well as Audi played, I don't think it's necessarily the right decision. PP God, unfortunately, again, is going to be my dud of the series here. Just looked kind of rough, and it's not, again, like I always say, it's tough for supports to look good when your team is losing, but even in the games where he, I thought the Thresh game looked really good. I thought the Nautilus game looked really bad, and I thought the Leona game looked really bad. And it's just tough. Obviously, it's tough to consistently generate things. You have Y4 here in the bottom lane. You've obviously been swapping out between Y4 and Trigger. I think Y4 looks a little bit better, but that's just my personal opinion. I just think all of Victory 5 looked a little bit tough here. You could have given Dud of the series to Mole, and I don't think I would have complained at all. But, I gave it to PP God instead. I thought Mole was at least trying to be proactive here on the rise. Whereas, PP God just struggled a lot, in my opinion. As for the outlooks of these two teams, RNG is one of the best teams in the league. Kind of a surprise, but they are definitely there. Victory 5 is maybe a little bit worse than we expected. We're going to be seeing that maybe a little bit later in the week as well. So, just maybe not what you wanted to see out of Victory 5 this week after what was a pretty good start to the year. You know, they didn't look fantastic, but they looked decently consistent. So not exactly the bounce back you wanted to see here in week 4 for them. That's going to go ahead and take us into our next series, and that series is LNG Esports taking on Bilibili Gaming in a 2-1 series win here for LNG, who LNG has really come out firing to start the year. I was really high on this roster. If you go and check my preseason predictions, I was definitely optimistic about what this roster could accomplish. I was a little bit concerned about how Icon would bounce back from what was a pretty rough 2020, and if this bot lane would continue to develop. All of that has pretty much happened. This team has looked very, very, very good, especially this bot lane. They've really been the shining light of this LNG team. And that's my player of the series here. It's going to go to Iwandi, who was really, really fantastic here. Just kind of outclassing both Aiming and Mark for a decent part of this series. Aiming, I thought, played pretty decent, but Mark just looking not as good as Iwandi, which is not what I would have expected to say even just a week ago here. LNG just looks very, very complete as a team. Tarzan coming in looks like one of the better junglers in the LPL. Makuya, surprisingly enough, has looked very competent in that top lane. He had a very good game 1 on that Gnar especially. That's a pick I expect this team to go back to a lot. It definitely looks like it fits their style rather well. And obviously, I'm notoriously an anti-blind pick Gnar kind of guy, but, you know, I think when you have a player who's maybe a weakness on your team, I think Gnar's a good pick for that. Icon looked really, really good here. I don't necessarily, like I say, I don't like the Azir pick, but if you're ever going to pick Azir, into Akali is exactly when you should do it. I think that matchup is very, very good for Azir. You can poke her out. You can, stay relatively safe the entire time. There's very little Akali can do to maintain control of you, because once she hits 6, you're also going to hit 6. So this is one of the times I actually do like that pick here. But overall, I just think LNG looks really good. BLG doesn't look too bad. They did pick up that win in Game 2 here, mostly off the back of Zika, who I thought was pretty good this week. Just kind of what you wanted to see from Zika here, maybe not so much the rest of the roster. I think Meteor has sneakily been one of the better junglers as well in the LPL. I think both of these junglers have been very, very good. Not much to talk about with the rest of the roster. Everybody's just kind of been meh. Aiming had that fantastic start to the year. He came out firing. He's really cooled off. This bot lane in general has just kind of cooled off in the recent weeks here. So hopefully they can get back to the form that they were in the first week or two when they were really, really just dominating everybody. As for the outlooks of these teams, LNG is definitely looking like a solid playoff team. Bilibili's also probably a playoff team, but LNG really, really looks solid. Obviously, I try not to be biased with these LPL reviews, but as you guys know, I am an LNG supporter in terms of LPL teams, so it's really, really cool to see this team work out. I think there's a lot of talent here, and it's really, really good to see it all coming together. Hopefully, they can all stay together. We've seen this before with LPL teams where they start off really strong and then fall apart towards the end. There is a chance that LNG is one of those pretender-type teams, but honestly, I don't know how likely that is. I think they might be one of the more likely ones to be pretenders, but by the flip side, they could also really just be an underrated team that is improving very, very steadily in that bot lane. That's going to lead us into Day 3, and our first series of Day 3 is going to be eStar Gaming taking on FunPlus Phoenix in a pretty solid series win here for FunPlus FPX, who looked very, very good throughout the week. This team has definitely found its footing. They are, without a doubt, one of the best teams in the LPL. I think a lot of people had maybe lower expectations for this roster, mostly just because of how the bot lane had performed last year. They were definitely, slowing down in comparison to what their 2019 was. But if you're talking about 2021, this has maybe been the best bot lane or one of the best bot lanes in the entire world so far. Crisp is going to be my player of the series here, and he's actually also going to be my player of the week here for the entirety of Week 4 in the LPL. Crisp was fantastic for FPX this week, really just taking over games. He played the Rel and the Alistar. His engages were incredible. He has really turned out to be one of the best supports in the entire LPL. LWX has bounced back really, really well as well. He has, turned into one of the better AD carries. But flipping over to the eStar side, Rat is going to be my dud of the series, and ironically, he's actually also going to be my dud of the week here for Week 4 in the LPL. This is a position that I was very concerned about for eStar going into 2021, and those concerns have certainly been justified, as he has really, really looked outclassed in almost every single matchup. Xiaoxi, I think, is a pretty decent, middle half to even maybe above average support here in the LPL, but there's only so much he can do when his AD carry just isn't able to follow up on things. His champion pool looks limited. He doesn't look very good on the Kai'Sa. He doesn't look very good on the Samira, which are the big picks right now. His best picks have been kind of the more off-meta stuff. The Xayah has looked decent for him. That's definitely been his more consistent pick, but just not what you wanted to see. I think the consistency for this team, I think eStar has a lot of upside, and we've talked about it. They've won games this year, but they just don't have that consistency, that week-to-week, that game-to-game consistency, mostly because mostly Zeus and Rat are kind of drawbacks. Irma, I thought, has, he was really, really rough to start the year. I thought he's solidified a little bit. And everybody knows I'm a pretty decent fan of Hacker and Xiaoxi here. I think both of them are relatively consistent, but this team just doesn't have a full 5 of consistent players, which is really, really hurting them here. As for the outlooks of these teams, FPX looks like one of the best teams in the league. I would not be surprised if they are the best team in the league right now. I think you could make that argument between them and EDG. I think RNG could be in that discussion. I don't know if they're quite in there yet for me, but I definitely think FPX is fantastic. eStar looks like one of those teams that's just barely going to miss playoffs. They look like, some team that's in that like 10 to 13 to 14 range. They're going to be competitive, but they're not necessarily always going to win these series. They got absolutely bounced in game 2. Hopefully they can turn it around. Bot lane definitely looks like a weakness for this roster, but hopefully they can figure out what's going on there. And, there is a chance that this team does make playoffs. I just don't know how likely that is. Moving on to our next series, and that is Invictus Gaming taking on Rogue Warriors in what was a pretty dominant 2-0 series win here for IG. This is exactly what the doctor ordered. This team has been looking very, very suspect over the course of the beginning of the season here, losing some games that they shouldn't lose, and then winning some games that they honestly shouldn't win. IG has just looked overall pretty inconsistent. This is exactly what you wanted to see here out of this team. The biggest weakness for this roster, honestly, to start 2021 has been the Shy in the top lane, and he looked absolutely dominant in this series, especially on that Quinn pick that just looked utterly brilliant. Obviously, we know that he is an expert marksman top player. That's kind of his specialty. It's what he does best, that more aggressive style. He brings out the Quinn here into the Renekton, and he absolutely obliterates Ziv. Ziv, who is definitely looking like a weakness for this Rogue Warriors team. The Shy is my player of the series, and Ziv is going to be my dud of the series here. Just an outclassing in the top lane. He looked utterly brilliant on that Quinn. The rest of the team looked fantastic as well. I want to give a shout out to this bot lane that obviously there was a lot of talk about what combination of players IG was going to use in this bot lane throughout the year. They have so many bot laners and supports on this roster, but they do end up going with Wink and Balan, and they really haven't been switching them out like expected. I do think that's the right call. I think this bot lane has actually been a pleasant surprise for this roster. I thought Wink was really, really good on eStar. Balan has always been relatively underrated in terms of being a global support here. Rookie is just one of the best players in the world. I love him. Love him on this Twisted Fate pick. If I can get him on this pick every single game, I'm going to. It's something that he just dominates on. It's perfect for his style. I want him on it all the time. Jun has looked very, very good as well in replacing Ning. Not necessarily something I expected. Jun has been a lot more aggressive than I think I expected. He was very, very aggressive, obviously, in the LDL, but it's not, that's not always what translates into the LPL here, but that's definitely translated. This Invictus Gaming team, obviously, I guess to no one's surprise, is incredibly aggressive and incredibly, they have a stranglehold from ahead. As for Rogue Warriors, this team is just not that good. They need to figure out what they're doing in the bot lane. We'll get to that a little bit later this week, but this team just doesn't know what it's doing. You start with Michi and Reheal in here. You bring in Chiu in that support position. Just figure it out. Like, you're putting players in here. You're kind of like swapping left and right, going over and over again. It almost feels like no one's ever going to be able to develop any sort of consistency here in the bot lane. I still don't know what happened to Cullen, who I thought was relatively good to start the year. They bring Michi in here. Michi is playing in the bot lane, and even later in the week, we'll see Chocho actually move to that bot lane position. I don't know what they're doing, but whatever they actually end up doing, they just have to figure it out and stick to it, because at some point that you have to let this team develop some sort of chemistry, and right now they just do not have that. Invictus Gaming looks good. I'm not necessarily willing to put them in that top tier yet just because of the lack of consistency, but Rogue Warriors is not good. That upset win over top was most certainly an outlier. I think a lot of people had a lot of hope for this roster after that. It is not maintained. This team looks lost. Worth pointing out, Haro looked very, very good in this series. It's really, really tough when you are an 11-kill Graves and you still lose the game, but such is life here for Haro. I definitely think he has been the shining light of this Rogue Warriors team. He himself also, though, has been relatively inconsistent. So even when, even if he's been definitely the best performer, he's not necessarily been one of the, best junglers in the league or anything like that. Just you really want to see something else from Rogue Warriors. I just want them to figure out what they're doing here in the bot lane. And Invictus Gaming, this is exactly what we wanted to see. We just need to see this every single series instead of once every 3 series now. That's going to go ahead and take us into day 4 of week 4 here, and that is going to be kicked off with LGD Gaming taking on Bilibili Gaming, BLG, in a pretty dominant 2-0 win here for BLG. There's not much to talk about here. This is exactly kind of the result we expected. The series was rather boring, if I'm being honest, so not a ton to talk about here. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I will go over the teams at least a little bit. BLG looks good. This is exactly what you wanted to see from them. Zika is going to be my player of the series here. He had a pretty good week here on BLG. Even in their loss earlier in the week, I thought he was the shining light, and he was definitely the best player here against LGD. He is kind of coming into his own. After, I don't want to say a rough start to the year, but, he's replacing someone like Fofo, who is a pretty talented mid laner, so he had a lot of shoes to fill, but he comes in here. He looks really, really good against LGD here, with Uniboy probably being one of the shining lights of this LGD team, or at least what you would expect to be, so... but kind of going across to the LGD side, they're just bad. They're probably the worst team in the LPL, which is really tough to see, obviously coming off of a Worlds appearance last year, but they blow up this roster, really only bringing Kramer back. Kramer is in the lineup now for what that's worth. He finally is here, but it doesn't seem like that's really going to change their fortune too much because this team does not look very good. Colt is going to be my dud of the series here. Colt has looked very, very bad to start the year. Honestly, most of this team has looked very, very bad, but I think Colt especially has probably been the worst performing member of this LGD team, one of the worst performing members of the LPL so far in 2021. Definitely tough to see in that top lane. You do have Garvey, who is a former top laner. He was playing bot lane while Kramer was gone. I'd be interested to see Garvey, get a shot there in the top lane just to see what he can do, but if you want to stick with Colt, that's fine too. You're switching out between Kui and Flora here. Kui playing game 1, Flora playing game 2 here for LGD. Neither really looking that good. Kui's been playing throughout the most of the year, and he's looked okay, I guess. Flora didn't look that great in his game 2 on Nidalee, but he was going into Graves, and it was Meteor, who's one of the best junglers in the league, so it's really tough to see how good this team actually is, or I guess how bad this team actually is in this case, but hopefully they can figure it out, because LGD is an organization that I really want to see succeed. It's really tough to see someone that was so successful last year just completely fall off like they are this year, but as it is right now, they do look like the worst team in the LPL. As for BLG, like I said earlier, they look like a bottom half playoff team, which is a good thing for them. Playoffs expanded to 10 teams this year, so it's a lot easier for them to get in. I think they could make some noise in the playoffs if they do go ahead and make it. I don't think they're actually going to be better than, one of those teams that ends up finishing like 3rd or 4th, sometime around there, but it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening if they do go ahead and make it in. That's going to bring us to our next series, and what is, I'm almost certain, the fastest series of the year so far. That's going to be Oh My God taking on Suning in a 2-0 absolute massacre here by Suning. This is a team that looked very questionable to start the year, but they did not look questionable here. They looked absolutely dominant against OMG. OMG subbing in Alili, I believe is how you pronounce it, into that top lane position. They've really just not been able to figure out what they want to do there. Obviously, New starting the year was not very good. They've kind of been testing out a few other younger players to see what sticks, and so far nothing has. Alili is going to be my dud of the series here for OMG. He did not look good. He got completely outclassed, especially in that game 2. He got absolutely obliterated by Bin, who has actually been really, really slow to start the year. So, not necessarily what you wanted to see there. He got obliterated on that Gangplank. Just not a pick I ever want to see him on again. But the player of the series is going to go to Angel here, who I think has been the most consistent player for the Suning roster so far in 2021. I know I was very, very down on Suning's outlook, especially after last week. And in my preseason predictions, a lot of people were kind of, I don't want to say upset, but questioning how low I was on Angel. He has definitely looked much better than I think he looked last year. Whether or not that's just because he has to pick up the pace of what Huanfeng, Bin, and SOFM are letting down, that's up to interpretation, but he looked very, very good in this series. I really, really love the Kassadin pick here in Game 2. You go to that Udyr-Azir combination that Suning pulled out in Game 1. What's the best way to cancel that out? And you also have that Gangplank in the top lane. Kassadin absolutely shuts that down. So much mobility to stop Udyr. The ability to get onto Azir and really, stick because of the ultimate. It's just a lot of really, really, really good ideas here coming out from Suning. I love that Game 2 draft. So big props to them. This is, like I said, the fastest series of the year. Both games ending in under 25 minutes. An absolute stomp here. Suning looks very good. I'm not willing to consider them, back just yet, obviously, because, they beat up on OMG, who is one of the worst teams in the league. But this is definitely a step in the right direction if they do want to go ahead and make playoffs. As for OMG, they're bad. They looked competitive early in the year. We were talking about them, being a tough out. That's kind of all faded into the background now. They really have just lost all their confidence and don't look good at all. This is a team that's going to struggle. Them, LGD, ThunderTalk, Rogue Warriors, those are kind of your bottom teams that I really don't see having a chance at making playoffs here. Obviously, things could completely turn around. They could figure out what the hell is going on in the top lane there and completely turn it around. But as of right now, I see OMG as kind of a team that not really a contender in any sense. That's going to lead us into Day 5 here in Week 4, and that's going to be kicked off with eStar Gaming taking on LNG Esports in another very solid 2-0 win here for LNG. An expected win here, but another one that is very reassuring. LNG, I think, was a lot of people's pick after the first couple weeks to be that pretender team, that one that was maybe ranked quite a bit higher than they actually deserved. That looks to be not as true right now. Obviously, I think their schedule has been quite easy. They're definitely their best win has been the Invictus Gaming win, but, eStar isn't a terrible team, and they're definitely, eStar's fighting for a playoff spot as well, so it's good to see that come out here. Tarzan is going to be my player of the series here. Like I said earlier, he's been having a very, very good start to the year. Him and this bot lane have really been the impressive parts of this LNG team. He looked very, very good in this series, most specifically on that Olaf in Game 2. I thought he looked very, very solid. Icon as well, having a very, very good series. Just this LNG team as a whole, I think, looks very conducive. Makuya, I thought, was going to be the weakness here in the top lane. He's not necessarily the strength, quote-unquote, the strength of the team. He's not the carry, but he has definitely not been the weakness. He has looked very, very good on that weak side, playing pretty much without any sort of help and not really giving up too much. Irma is going to be my dud of the series here for eStar. I just got finished talking him up in the series earlier this year as someone who continuously got better. This was not the series that he got better in. He did not look good in either game, but most specifically in that Orianna game in Game 2, he did not look super good. I really, really don't like this Udyr pick in both games 1 and 2. Udyr into Olaf is a very, very tough matchup for the Udyr to do anything in. So I'm not a big fan of it here for Hacker, but, I've gone on record at nauseum about how much I don't like that pick. I don't want to spend too much time here. The series was rather predictable and rather straightforward. LNG is just the better team here, which is good to see for them. They definitely look like a middle to top-ish tier playoff team. Somewhere in that like 4 to 7 range, I think is where you're looking at for LNG, which is a big improvement over what we saw last year. As for eStar, this is a team that I know really, really wants to make playoffs. They actually started the year rather well, but they've really fallen off. The cracks in the system are really starting to show. Xiaoxi can only do so much here on these engaged champions when he really has no follow-up. So really, really tough to see here from eStar. I don't think that they're going to be a playoff team, unfortunately. But, obviously things could really turn around. I do like some of the pieces that they have here. The lows are low for this eStar roster. That's going to go ahead and take us into what was the match of the week, at least for me. Maybe not in gameplay, but definitely in ramification. And that's going to be Team WE taking on RNG Royal Never Give Up. A huge 2-0 series win here for RNG over WE. This is not what I expected. Honestly, I thought WE was more of a legitimate team here than RNG, but that was definitely proven to be wrong, and RNG has really, really heavily made a case here to be considered one of the best teams in the world. Wei is going to be my player of the series here. He was very nearly my player of the week here. I did go ahead and give that to Crisp on FPX, but Wei came very, very close. I think you could really reasonably give it to either. It is definitely worth shouting him out He is definitely looking like one of the surprises of 2021. He is going into what I had as one of the best junglers, probably the best performing jungler of 2021 so far in Beishang, and he just looked better than him. I don't think anyone expected Wei to come in and be this dominant here on RNG, but it's definitely been a pleasant surprise if you are a fan of this roster. As for WE, I think the cracks are definitely starting to show. This team definitely has a lot of talent, but there is some weaknesses on this roster, most notably Zhao Meng, who is my dud of the series here. I've talked about it earlier in the year, even when this team was winning. Zhao Meng has this tendency to just be in the wrong place. His positioning can be very, very questionable at times. He gets caught out quite frequently, and if you're going to be on picks like the Jhin and the Aphelios, that's just not something you can really afford to do. Especially the Aphelios, your lack of mobility just really causes you to, once you get caught, you really have no way of getting out, and that's exactly what we saw here. Gala was able to generate quite a significant lead there in the bottom lane, but this WE team is still good. I think the players that you really, really were high on this WE team didn't play too bad. I thought Breathe and Missing were definitely the two best performers here in this series, but that jungle mid duo, I think, definitely took a step back. Shanks was definitely a question mark going into the year. Beishang was not. I was really, really high on Beishang, but he did not look super great in the series. Again, I don't love the Udyr pick, but you're going into Wei, who has, again, secretly been one of the best junglers in the entire world this year. You put him on that Kindred, and this team knows how to play around him very, very well. I love this team comp out of RNG. So as for the outlooks of these teams, RNG is legit. They are one of the best teams in the world. They are a contender for the LPL finals here, which is not what I expected to say at the beginning of the year. WE is still a very, very good team, but they may not be as perfect as we had been led to believe throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. They definitely have some rough edges that they need to clean up before they are legitimately considered one of the top 2 teams in the LPL. That's going to go ahead and move us into day 6 of week 4 here in the LPL, and to kick that off, it's going to be the upset of the week here with ThunderTalk Gaming taking on Victory 5 in a 2-0 pretty clean win here for ThunderTalk, which a lot of people did not expect, most notably me. I was very, very shocked by this outcome, but pleasantly shocked because I quite like this ThunderTalk team, and they've made some interesting changes. So TT does pick up the win here. Xiao Peng does stay in here in the jungle, and he looks relatively good. I actually thought he was one of the better performing members here. That top side, I think especially, was exactly what you wanted to see here. Twyla is going to be my player of the series here. I thought he was very, very good. I love the Nico pick here in Game 2. It's the first Nico that we have seen globally in 2021, and it definitely worked out here into the Yone. I really, really like that pick. I like, Twyla's always had this kind of like weird reputation, but I really like what he is actually able to accomplish here on TT. I was a little bit lower, if you remember, about him coming in here over Captain, just because I thought Captain was definitely the positive outlook, the more optimistic point of this ThunderTalk team, him and Teen, but Twyla has looked really, really good since coming in, so it's hard for me to say. It looks like Twyla is better right now, and I might have been wrong about that in my analysis last week. But as for the bottom lane, I think that's definitely still your weakness. It's just someone that's not generating a ton of leads. I think Teen is really, really good, and I think he's not going to get a lot of credit for how this team played in this series, but I think Teen is really, really good. Him and Twyla, I think, are definitely the two shining lights of this ThunderTalk team. As for Victory 5, as you can see, my dud of the series is just the top lane. You got to figure out what you're doing. I don't know where Longxing is. Invincible played in Game 1. He didn't look that great. Audi came in Game 2. He did not look good either. You got to figure out what's going on here. You're also swapping out your bot laners here with Y4 and Trigger. I'm not a fan of, this constant swapping over and over and over again, because I think in League especially, it's a game that really, really rewards practice and communication and chemistry between the players, and it's really hard to form that if you're constantly switching up what these players are dealing with, who they're playing with and how they're communicating. I don't think that's necessarily a formula for success here, and that's kind of what we're seeing here with Victory 5. They're kind of slowly falling off. The team just doesn't look cohesive. They don't look good together. I don't really like their Game 1 draft, but it's not that bad. Just overall, just need to figure out what's going on. If Longxing is available, play him. If Y4 or Trigger, whoever you want to play, give them the time, because let them either prove you right or prove you wrong and then switch it out later. Just right now, you're not giving anyone a chance to really develop enough chemistry and have enough time in that starting lineup to even prove whether or not it's worth it or not. So just pick someone, give them time. If it works, great. If it doesn't, switch it up later. But, you know, just give someone a shot here, you know? As for the outlooks of these teams, it's a good win for ThunderTalk. I don't think this makes them a playoff contender. I think they're taking advantage of a pretty vulnerable Victory 5 team right now, but, you know, it's good nonetheless. It's good to see these young players playing well. As for V5, like I said, you have to figure it out if you want to expect to be a playoff team. This is a team that could very quickly fall out of playoff contention if they do not figure it out. So it's something that I really, really hope they get sooner rather than later. That's going to bring us into a battle of the former world champions here as Invictus Gaming takes on FunPlus Phoenix in a very, very solid 2-0 win here for FPX. Like I said earlier in the week, Crisp is my player of the week. However, he was not the star of the show in this series. That title firmly belongs to Bo here in the jungle. Obviously, Bo coming in for Tion, who is struggling with those wrist issues. Bo came in here and just looked utterly dominant. 16 kills in game 1, 11 kills in game 2, 27 kills in 2 games against what is one of the more hyped up teams of 2021 here in Invictus Gaming. Obviously, former world champions. You have a lot of, you know, world champion pedigree here with the Shy, Rookie, and Bao still maintaining from that 2018 roster. So it's not like this is just some, you know, bad team. It's not LGD that Bo just ran over. It's a pretty solid team, and he really, really just dominated. I mean, I've never seen a player really just take over quite like this. I do want to give a big shout out to Crisp on this rel, who has just been phenomenal. His engages are terrific. I think that's the style that's really, really going to suit him best. These engaged champions, the rel, the Alistair, have definitely been his best so far in 2021. I expect to see them go back to it a lot. I know I've talked a lot about him already this week, but it's worth pointing out. The Shy is going to be my dud of the series here. This guy is just, we know what he is. We know what the Shy is at this point, don't we? He's going to dominate on Quinn when he gets ahead, and he's going to absolutely look terrible on Sion when he gets behind. It's really, really tough to judge the Shy because he is, at both times, the most proactive and the most detrimental player to this Invictus Gaming roster. And it's really tough to judge how good IG can be because it's really just a coin flip on what version of the Shy you are getting that day. I think the rest of the roster actually didn't even look too terrible in this game. I think it was mostly the Shy that was throwing away leads. Jun as well, I thought was rather bad, but that's just my personal opinion. I think Rookie's rather consistent. He didn't look that good in game 1 on the Aurelia, but it's tough to look good as Aurelia into Twisted Fate. And then as for Wink, you know, again, I think he's been fine. I don't think he's been bad. This bot lane has been okay. They haven't necessarily been lighting the world on fire, but they have definitely not been the problem for this Invictus Gaming roster, and they've definitely not been the reason that they are not picking up wins here. FPX is awesome. They are one of the best teams in the league. If Bo is going to play like this, they are one of the best teams in the world. No question. You have Nuggery, Bo, Doenby, LWX, and Crisp. That's one of the best teams in the world if they continue to play like they're playing right now. As for Invictus Gaming, I think this team is just going to be middling. I don't want to say a 500 team, but just something similar to that, right? Of some series, they're just going to come out and they're going to dominate because that's the side you got that day. And some series, they're going to come out and look terrible like they did here. And that's just the side of them you got that day. It's really, really going to be tough to expect any sort of consistency from this IG team, but they're going to need it if they really actually want to be a contender for anything later on in the year. Moving on to our final day here, day 7 of week 4 of LPL Spring Split 2021. And that's going to be Rare Adam taking on Rogue Warriors in what was a battle of two teams that really have not been that good to start the year. Rare Adam, I think, has definitely been better, but, you know, Rogue obviously had the bigger win. I think it's just interesting to see both of these teams go up against each other because I actually thought they were in relatively similar positions. Rare Adam is clearly the better team here. Rogue Warriors is not good. I think we can, you know, pretty confidently say that at this point. Rogue Warriors is not good. They're not contending for a playoff spot. They're just not going to be in that conversation. Rare Adam, I think, is going to try. I don't know how likely it is that they actually go ahead and get in here, but they look pretty decent here. iBoy is going to be my player of the series here. He looked good. This is definitely his best series of the year so far. Like I said, iBoy is going to be a big reason why this team either wins or loses games. We kind of know what we're going to get, especially out of like Cube and Hang. iBoy is going to be kind of that X factor of if it can be 2017, 2018 iBoy. This team's going to win a lot more games than maybe expected, maybe sneak into that playoff spot. If it's not, if we're going to get 2020 iBoy, this is not a playoff team. This time we did get that 2017, 2018 iBoy here on the Kaisa. This is a pick I expect to see a lot out of him. Like I said, I think in their win last week or 2 weeks ago. I just want him on Kai'Sa. I want him on only Kai'Sa. If you can get this pick, you take it every single game. It's definitely the one that he's looked most comfortable on. Really the only one that I trust him on at this point. As for Rogue Warriors, Forge is going to be my dud of the series here. I think we can, at this point, confidently say that Forge is not a very good LPL mid laner. I have been making that argument for quite a few years now. I know Forge has kind of been hyped up, on Vici Gaming and wherever, IG Young or whatever he's come through. We can confidently say at this point, Forge is outmatched in the LPL. He is not ready. He is not good. I don't mean to say this to drag Forge, by the way. Obviously, he's 8 million times better than I'm ever going to be at League of Legends, but just, it's important to note from an analytical perspective, I just don't think he's going to be able to hang with other LPL mids. I think that's a direction where you definitely want to start looking for other options. You do start Chocho here in the bot lane with Reheal. I have no idea what's going on here. Like I said, you just got to figure out what's going on. Like I said with Victory 5 as well. Figure out some consistency. Let these players play together, develop something, and then you can see how good they really are. Rather than just saying, oh, it's one game, it didn't work, let's go to something else. It's not what you want to see here. Chocho here in the bottom lane didn't really look that good. He played the Tristana and the Jhin, neither of which are really the best picks right now. The Tristana looked quite awful into the Kai'Sa, if I'm being quite honest. He got, absolutely obliterated. But I want to see Cullen. I want to see Cullen back in this lineup. If you think Reheal's better than Chocho, that's fine. Play Cullen and Reheal and give him some time. I just don't understand what this roster is doing. They're too impulsive right now, and they need to figure out what's going on. As for the outlooks, like I said, Rare Adam, is fighting for that playoff spot. I'm not sure if they get in. Rogue Warriors is not good. They are definitely one of the bottom 3 teams, bottom 4 teams in the LPL, and that's kind of unfortunate because I do think you have some talent on this roster. There's just no consistency, and it's not coming together for them. That's going to bring us into our final series of Week 4 here, and it is a rematch of your 2020 Summer Finals, and that's going to be Top Esports taking on JD Gaming. Top with a 2-0 solid win here. Exactly what you wanted to see. This is exactly what the doctor ordered for Top Esports here. They've looked a little bit questionable to start the year. They've, lost some series that they absolutely shouldn't have, most notably that Rogue Warriors one. JD Gaming as well, though, looking very down almost, not looking as nearly dominant as they did in last year's summer split, more specifically, even in spring, because they did win spring. It's not like they were bad in spring. They were the best team in spring, but this is a team that needs to get it together. JD, like I said, has had probably the toughest schedule of any team in the LPL to start the year here, but that's no excuse for my dud of the series here in Zoom and how he has started the year. Zoom has honestly been the biggest disappointment, maybe in the entire world, definitely in the LPL. He has not looked good so far in 2021. It's not really what you expected to see. Zoom, of all the players that you thought on this JD Gaming team to look like down and to not look as good, Zoom is not the one I expected, but he's definitely been the weak point of this JD Gaming team, and he's not been one of the, he's been one of the lower half top laners in the LPL just in terms of performance so far this year. There's some players on TES that kind of fall into that category as well, but not in this series at all. Knight, I thought, had a really tough start to the year, but he looked fantastic. He is going to be my player of the series here. Goes deathless here on the Zoe and the Orianna. This is what you wanted to see out of him. He goes up against Yagao. He's always been fantastic into Yagao. That was no different in this series. TES looked very solid. Jackie Love has kind of been the most consistent member. Karsa is going to continue to be that guy that's just picking weird things. He pulls out the Trundle here in Game 2. Not sure if I'm a huge fan of that, but it did go ahead and work. In this particular instance, that gank-heavy style worked alongside that Samira and the Orianna rather well, but not sure how consistent that pick is going to be overall. We're seeing Karsa kind of pick a lot of those weird ones. He's taking Gragas into the jungle as well. Just a lot of the more off-meta stuff coming out here from TES, which I don't know was nearly as expected. This bot lane looks good. This top lane looks fine. I think TES has finally figured it out. They had a rough start to the year, but it looks like they've gained their mojo back. I have a lot of faith that this team is very, very quickly going to propel up the standings. We know they have the talent. Knight's one of the best players in the world. Jackie Love's one of the best players in the world. Carson 369 are not that far behind. Juo looks very good. So, big fan of what TES was actually able to do in this series here. Outlook for these teams, top looks like they figured it out. Like I said, they look like they're very fast approaching that top tier. I'm not sure I'm quite able to put them in there just yet. I need to see a few more weeks of consistency in order to put them up there with like EDG and FPX and RNG, but they're definitely on their way and very, very close. As for JD, again, I don't want to overreact too much. We don't even know if they have their full lineup in yet because, you know, they still don't have GA and Mystic in the lineup. So, you know, there's a chance that they bring those two in and they're better. There's a chance they never bring those two in and they run with Yagao and Loken for the rest of the year. I don't know quite what they're going to do. Whatever they're going to do, they need to figure it out soon, though, because we are almost halfway through the year and they are under 500, which is not what you wanted to see from a finalist last split. That's going to go ahead and do it for week 4 here in the LPL. A lot of really interesting results, some shock upsets, most notably ThunderTalk taking down Victory 5 here and top looking good. Up on the screen right now, on the left-hand side, you are going to see the current updated LPL standings. A number is going to be in front of them, either a plus, a minus, or an NC. That's going to relate to how they changed from last week. If you want to see last week's review, that's going to go ahead and be down in the description. You can go ahead and check that out there. Actually, in the description is going to go ahead and be the playlist for all of the LPL weekly reviews. On the right side, you're going to see my personal power rankings, and again, how that's updated from last week. We'll talk about the biggest risers and the biggest fallers. The biggest riser this week is Top Esports. Jumping back up into that top 5, they looked very, very solid in that JD Gaming matchup. I think this is a team that is really starting to find their mojo, and I think that they are really, really going to quickly propel into that top tier. As for the biggest faller of the week, that's actually going to be a 3-way tie between Team WE dropping from 2 to 4, JD Gaming dropping from 5 to 7, and then Victory 5 dropping from 8 to 10. I'm going to officially give my award to Victory 5, though, just because of that big upset loss, I should say, to ThunderTalk. Victory 5 is quickly falling out of that playoff race. I have them barely, just barely in that position right now. It's very likely that they fall out of this if they don't figure out what's going on very, very quickly. So with Suning and Rare Adam right on their heels, it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, go ahead, please leave a like down there. It's going to go ahead and let me know that you guys are enjoying the content that I'm putting out. And of course, like I said earlier, it's going to help get this video out to as many people as possible. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. I hope you continue to have a wonderful day, and I will see you all later.